We have a lot of reasons for proposing these changes, and ultimately the reasons are connected to the idea of college and career readiness. They're connected to acquisition of 21st century skills. They're connected to the amount of investment we're putting into our high school system with the creation of the career the CAPS program and the Center for Advanced and Professional Studies. All of those components are our primary reasons. We have some secondary reasons. We right now have designed a high school system for students to be given 32 opportunities in their four-year high school career to earn high school credit. And our current graduation requirements demand 24 and a half of those credits. We did not see a change in student completion of those credits when we moved to an 8-period day. We pretty much had about the same graduation rate as we did when we had a 7-period day. So then the question is, given that we have 32 opportunities, are there other things we want our students to be able to do and know before they leave high school? We've got the 32 opportunities. Let's increase the expectations to reflect what we want our kids to know and be able to do. We actually began the discussion about a year ago when the University of Wyoming sent a letter to all school districts saying that they were contemplating changes to their entry requirements. And then that began a conversation among our board about what could graduation requirements look like in the school district. So we put together a document, a 3-ring binder for our board to review various questions that they had, and through a number of work sessions this last spring, we began to explore answers to those questions. And then at a retreat in June, the board put together the draft of the document that I shared today, and then asked that we begin to seek feedback for that. We looked at what kind of a drop-dead date, if you will, we needed if we were going to put this in place for next year's freshmen. And that drop-dead date is sometime before winter holidays, so that we can put this into our enrollment guides. I think a lot of that's going to depend on feedback that we get from the online survey, from the different emails that we've received, and putting that together. We'll make some recommendations to the board, and of course the board has the final say on how they'd like to do that. But I think it's going to depend on the feedback that we get from the community, from our schools. We did a sort of an analysis of requirements in other school districts, and actually presented that information to the board in a packet that I gave them last May and June. And that's one of the things that we discovered in there is a number of our 4A school districts that are similar in size to us. They indeed have increased their graduation requirements, adding more electives, adding specific requirements for career and technical ed, or for fine and performing arts. It just depends on which school district we looked at, and I shared that information with our board. A few of the comments that I've received, there's some real support for the financial literacy piece. I think that's a kind of a dominant one that seems to be out there. Mixed reviews on the senior project idea. I think people really appreciate that we are trying to make school requirements look more like life after high school. I think that's a real interest, and I heard a number of positive comments about that. I think there's concern about us starting that process too early. For example, in our physical education program, in essence, if the policy went forward just as it's written now, students could just take 1 year of physical ed and then do some kind of 120 hours of proof that they're doing some physical education outside of the classroom. And I think that's a concern among physical education teachers for sure, and our community, in saying they're not sure if a freshman or a sophomore is ready for that level of responsibility. Maybe that's something more appropriate for a junior or senior, and maybe that's more appropriate after they've had a foundation of information around education, physical education. We know that math is a real gatekeeper for entrance into college, and it's an important piece. We also know that we have remediation issues when students do go to the college. So we know we've got a lot of work to do around math education, for example. The idea of how much math does a student need, I think we're in an environment now, nationally, internationally, where competition for science and technology kinds of jobs is really high. So the idea of insisting on more math and more science, I think, is an important one. Whether that needs to be for every student, I think, is a question the board will have to wrestle with in terms of how they put forward this requirement. As I said earlier, 55% of our graduating class from last year already has 4 credits in science, and 45% already had 4 credits in math. So I think the real question is, what percent of our entire graduating class do we want to have where students have at least 4 credits? And that's a question that our board has to wrestle with. Well, I think a couple of things. One is I had a parent ask me if this was like a done deal, and I said, absolutely not. Our board is really interested in getting the feedback from this survey, getting the feedback from the community before they make their final decisions. So I would say that's one rumor I want to dispel. Another rumor is, I don't know if it's a rumor, but I think it's a concern that because the administrative regulations have not been written yet, there's question about how some of these things might look. Let's take the senior project, for example. Or what does 120 hours of physical education outside, or physical activity outside of school look like? We don't have that level of detail. I certainly would not make that decision on my own. I would want to bring our PE teachers together, our athletic trainers in the community, and say, what should this look like? So while the regulations haven't been written, we'd want to get the people that have that knowledge base to come together to actually do the writing. The survey's been open for a couple of weeks now, actually for the month of October. And I've been going around to schools, talking to students, to parents, to teachers. And I also met with all administrators and reviewed this information and asked them to take the survey. It's open to the community, it's on our website, and we do want a lot of feedback. We want to get people's opinion about each of the proposed ideas that have been put forward. And the board's going to take that information into